Okay, go ahead, Ross. Okay, everybody ready? Yep. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. My name is Sergeant Jason Robillard. It's Robilard. I'm with the Vancouver Police. Today I'm going to talk to you about a shooting that we had last night near Oppenheimer Park. Vancouver Police are investigating a shooting in Oppenheimer Park, raising concerns about the safety risks associated with the park. We've seen a sharp increase in the level of violence in and around the encampment at Oppenheimer Park in recent months. Our officers have responded to several 911 calls in the park every day, and we are very concerned about the safety of the people staying there, our officers, firefighters, and the City of Vancouver staff. Last night's shooting happened at around 10:30 p.m. Our officers on patrol in the area heard several gunshots and went to investigate. They discovered a 31-year-old Vancouver man with a gunshot wound. He was near Powell Street and Jackson Avenue. In addition to beginning their initial investigation, officers cleared the tents in the park to ensure everyone else was safe. In June alone, there were 92 emergency calls for police response in the park, and in May, there were 87. When we compare that to last year, the calls for service have gone up significantly. In 2008, in the same months, in May, there were 56 calls for service, and again in June, there was 56 calls. We want people in the park to be safe, and currently the environment there is not safe, even for our officers. On Wednesday, a police officer was assaulted as she tried to assist city crews who were there to keep the park clean. The man injured in the shooting is recovering in hospital in stable condition. Our officers believe that the suspect fled after the shooting through the park on foot. The investigation in the shooting remains ongoing and no arrests have been made. Anyone who may have witnessed the shooting on Wednesday night or has any information that could help this investigation, you're asked to call the VPD's Major Crimes Section at 604-717-2541. You can always call Crime Stoppers anonymously at 1-800-222-8477. Happy to take any questions that you have regarding this.
Given that nobody else can apparently use the park because it is full, and with this latest violence, is this a precursor to the city and VPD possibly removing the tents?
Well, I think this step here today is for us is to highlight the conditions currently at the park, not only for our officers, but for the people that are staying there at the park. We're obviously in consultation with the city. We are continuing to provide a police service and work in consultation with our other community partners. But right now, the conditions we're noticing are increasingly becoming violent and unsafe for our officers. Our officers, last night after the shooting, went through the park and they examined the tents to confirm that no additional rounds injured anybody else in the park. And in doing so, the park is quite crowded. There's some unsanitary conditions. Our officers are noticing rodents running around. And so, just the general consensus for our officers and for the people, that live there, we're noticing an increase in violence and some unsafe and unhealthy working conditions.
So these observations that your members make, and then also, I guess, the city crews of various departments make, these go to these reports or numbers go to the people who can make the decisions of whether or not this needs to go?
Well, I can't really speak to that, what happens with this or where we move forward from here. But, the purpose of this today here is not only to try and solve the shooting from last night and have anybody that may have any information about the shooting to give our investigators a call. But that shooting happened very close proximity to the park, was associated to the encampment. The suspect ran through the encampment after the shooting occurred. And we've noticed we've had we've had 92 calls for service in 1 month. That is an increase compared to this time last year, where we had 56 calls, and the month prior to that, we had 56. So we're noticing an uptake in calls. We had an officer that was assaulted Wednesday. She was kicked several times while she tried to remove a man that had jumped on a garbage truck that was removing rubbish from the area. So, these types of incidents are concerning for us. We're concerned for the health and safety of not only our officers that have to work there, but also for the people that are staying there, for Vancouver Fire Rescue Service, for the city employees that go through there on a daily basis with firefighters, and we're there to assist them. But we're seizing weapons. We're going through there. We've had 92 calls for service in 1 month alone. So we're putting a lot of police resources in here, and we're noticing an uptake in violence just from that park, from the encampment.
Given this violence, in particular the gunfire, how would you characterize this park now? I mean, is it, would you call it dangerous? Would you warn the public to stay away? How would you characterize this Oppenheimer Park?
Well, just to put it in a bit of context for you, when our officers are going to go through the park for a call for service or anything routine, they'll go routinely, and what I'm hearing, in no less than 4 officers together, just for officer safety. So I mean, these are armed officers, they're trained officers, they work the area, but they feel it's so unsafe right now that they need to go in a group of 4 officers. And that's just one example that I've heard. I've heard of other officers talking about sort of rodents scurrying up trees when they're walking through it. The conditions there, when you put the shooting into context, the 92 calls for service in 1 month compared to last year in the same month we had 56. We're looking at the shooting last night, where there was a shooting and the officers had to go through the park to confirm and make sure that everybody there was safe, that there was no additional rounds that struck anybody else. These are unsafe conditions. There's an increase in violence. An officer was assaulted there Wednesday night, kicked several times in the leg. So we're putting this all together. We're highlighting the conditions that our officers are seeing at Oppenheimer Park, and we're relating that to the current encampment that's there.
But would the Vancouver Police Department say to the regular public, we're talking about regular people with their children who walk in that public space or in that public area, to be aware?
I certainly would not recommend anybody bringing their children through Oppenheimer Park right now.
Sure wish I wasn't zooming in when you said that. Could you, sorry. Do you mind, in terms of recommendations on how the public should treat the park?
Well, right now I wouldn't recommend the general public to walk through Oppenheimer right now. Obviously there's an increase in violence. We had a shooting there last night. We have officers that are armed that feel the conditions, the working conditions there are increasingly becoming more violent and unsafe. So I wouldn't recommend anybody, certainly not to bring kids to the park at this time. And we are associating this to the encampment that's happening there right now.
Okay.
I just need a little wider shot, just for an establishing shot. Do you know how long the camp has been there?
I don't have that information.
Like it's a long time, and it's getting bigger and bigger. It's like more tents are being added. Just anecdotally, as I drive by, it does seem like there's more and more.
Is it concerning to the VPD that there are more and more tents being added to Oppenheimer Park in that sense? Obviously, that concentration is not something the VPD wants with people in that area, or the public or the people. What's it gonna take for the people who can make that decision to, aside from being tolerant, right, do something about this?
Well, we're certainly starting today, and we're highlighting today the conditions that we've seen recently at the park related to the encampment that's currently happening at Oppenheimer. And a number of instances and a number of things that we're seeing are leading us to believe that it's just becoming increasingly violent at the park. And obviously we're adding more tents there might intensify the problem. And we just want to highlight the conditions that our officers are having to work in. We want to bring this to the public and just let them know not only are we looking for information related to a shooting last night that we believe is associated to the encampment, but we're also letting the public know the current conditions that we have there.
Hey,
Do you have any
you
questions?
got anything?
Hey,
Hello.
now that I've missed everything. This was probably already asked, but I'm gonna ask you again, based on what I know. Why not push the city of Vancouver to do more to help you guys out on this front?
Well, right now, I can't speak to what's going to happen moving forward from here. I can say that we are in a consultation and we work with the City of Vancouver every day on a variety of issues. This particular issue right now, we want to highlight and make sure the public's aware of the current conditions that we're noticing from a police perspective that are currently happening at the park. So, last night we had this shooting, which is a very violent situation. A man is in hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, thankfully. Right after the shooting, our officers had to go through the encampment to make sure anybody in the tent was not injured in regards to a stray bullet or any of these types of things. And that's concerning for us. On Wednesday, we had an officer that was assaulted there. She was kicked in the knee at least 3 times by a man that had aggressively jumped on a garbage truck that was there, a City of Vancouver garbage truck, to remove some rubbish in the area. So we're noticing assaults on officers. We've had 92 calls for service in June in June alone. When you compare that to last June, where we had 56 calls for service last June. So we're noticing an increase in calls for service, an increase in violence in and around the park, and we're associating this to the encampment.
So something has to change.
Something has to change moving forward from here. We're looking, just want to make sure the public's aware of the conditions that our officers are having to deal with.
Great. Good for Mike.
So, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay, well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, take care.
Bye, guys.